Ever wanted to learn about every canceled Donkey Kong game? Find out in every canceled Donkey Kong game. Game Facts Special. There are at least 14 canceled or unreleased Donkey Kong games on consoles ranging from the NES and CDI to Game Boy and Gamecube. We'll be taking a look at leaked info and available content for each one. Make sure to like the video as we start off with Donkey Kong no Ongaku Asobi, a game that would have expanded Donkey Kong's musical career. Donkey Kong no Ongaku Asobi loosely translates to Donkey Kong playing his music, and was set to release on the Nintendo Famicom, and involves Donkey Kong playing on bass and DK Jr. playing the drums, with additional guests Mario on piano and Paulina fronting the vocals. The game would have had various game modes, including a music quiz, which tasked the player, as Mario, to identify notes from sheet music displayed on screen by jumping onto the correct note on a keyboard, which then synchronizes to DK's bass playing. It's also reported that a second player would have been able to join in as Paulina to help out. This highlights the educational aspect of the game, teaching musically minded players how to read music notation efficiently. A second mode, Donkey Band, would allow the player to take on the role of Front Lady Paulina, utilizing the Famicom controller's microphone in a karaoke-style game, encouraging the player to sing along. The cancellation came about when Nintendo lost the rights to the songs they wanted to use for the game. It's a mystery whether the songs, which were written by Japanese pop singer Seiko Matsuda, were actually ever licensed out at all. Perhaps Nintendo assumed they would be able to attain these rights by the time the game would release. Some screenshots of the game survive, so it's safe to assume the game was pretty much done. Donkey Kong Parking Attendant. Stefan Radosh, known mostly as the man who made the hit TV show Catchphrase, started his career in game making with Sega. In an interview he did with Game Informer, he described a bizarre situation. Sega managed to attain the rights to the Donkey Kong series sometime in the 80s. According to Stefan, the game involved the playable Donkey Kong working as a car parking attendant. The gameplay involved DK helping cars into empty spaces, all the while dodging drivers recklessly pulling out of their spots. Return of Donkey Kong. The only real pieces of evidence which suggest the existence of this game are articles from official Nintendo Player's Guide and Nintendo Fan Club, which highlighted DK's return as an upcoming release in its 5th edition. These publications spanned a whole year, from 1987 to 88. The game would have been a true sequel to the mainline DK titles, with the barrel rolling gameplay coming back in full swing, pun wholeheartedly intended. The publications teased that DK might actually be used as a player character, after the positive response towards the iconic main character. Return of Donkey Kong sadly faded out of public memory, as it was never even mentioned again, suggesting that it might have only been planned at that stage, and cancelled before work even began on prototyping the game. Donkey Kong CDI. Prior to the Donkey Kong Country boom in 1992-93, a DK game was being developed for the Philips CDI. Yes, that Philips CDI, which held such classic titles such as the spin-off Zelda games Wand of Gamelon and Zelda's Adventure. Initially highlighted in the Gaming Gossip section of Electronic Gaming Monthly issue 31, Donkey Kong was slated for a SNES 16-bit remake, but it was later corrected in issue 43 over a year later that the remake was going to be a sequel, and released not for the SNES, but the SNES CD and Philips CDI. Game developer Adrian Jackson Jones made it publicly known that the game was in development when he added his contributions to the project onto his LinkedIn resume. It states that he designed and implemented a proprietary game engine for a CDI Donkey Kong game during his time at Rydell Software Productions. This was corroborated in an interview with RSP's co-founder, Michael J. Rydell. He said that no assets survived the project due to the company's policy of trashing any canceled games. All that remains are the accounts of Jackson Jones' development and his struggles with wrestling the memory limitations of the CDI system. Perhaps the failure of the SNES CD product was ultimately the reason for the whole project being scrapped, but we don't know for sure. Donkey Kong 4. This rumored title was said to be a final release for the mainline DK games. However, it's speculated that this was a misconception. This false understanding led to the report in issue 13 of Mean Machines magazine, with a written account that it was test marketed in selected arcades, but nothing was released after this. Ultra Donkey Kong. Originally, Donkey Kong 64 was going to be an exclusive game for the Nintendo 64 disk drive. This was uncovered when Daniel Osen, a translator for Nintendo games, answered a question in Nintendo Power magazine regarding a Donkey Kong Country game for the N64. Volume 104 saw Daniel saying that Ultra Donkey Kong was mentioned in a few Japanese gaming magazines, but that it was likely to be a larger version of the original 64 game. IGN's translation of the Japanese magazine Dengeki corroborates his account, saying that it would provide a 3D Donkey Kong game exclusively on the N64 DD. Donkey Kong Plus. It's E3 2002, and a new Donkey Kong game is being teased for the GBA. Life is good.
Nice.
The tech demo that was demonstrated showed off the new ability to utilize the Gamecube link cable, which would allow players to create classic DK levels and then play them on the GBA. It was replaced with the Mario vs. Donkey Kong game, which still had a level creator within the source code. The series didn't see an officially released level creator until the sequel, so that development time didn't go to waste in the end. Super Donkey. Just when you thought you might have heard all the 2020 Nintendo Giga Leak had to offer, in swings Super Donkey. Included within this leak was the source code to Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, and within that were multiple prototypes, which really didn't match the final game whatsoever. Two of the earliest dated builds were named Super Donkey 1 and Super Donkey 2. These builds contained Donkey sprite data, and some other graphics related to the DK series, such as character sprites that look similar to the squawks from Donkey Kong Country. Super Donkey went on to become Yoshi's Island, and this iteration of Donkey Kong never came to be. Check out our full episode on Super Donkey to learn about everything found in the prototypes. Donkey Kong Country 4. There were many rumors that survived regarding a brand new DK Country game. An anonymous but credible source said that the idea of making Donkey Kong Country 4 for the Nintendo DS was pitched by a team at Rare, after the experience by porting the Donkey Kong Country games to the Game Boy Advance. This sequel never made it into development though. Diddy Kong Pilot. Found by game leakers at Rareware Central, this ROM was uncovered in 2011. It showed a build from a 2005 Game Boy Advance game, which had Diddy Kong and co. pit against each other in airplane racing. If released, it would have been another entry in the Diddy Kong Racing series. Prior to this, an ex-Rare employee showed off some unused gameplay from Diddy Kong Pilot. The footage shows what the game looked like in development during 2001 and displays multiple selection menus for characters, tracks, and game modes. It also has a short clip of the player racing as Cranky Kong in a time trial across an icy level named Tundra Tumble. This game ended up being reskinned and continued development as the Banjo Pilot game that released in 2005. Yet, game hackers would end up finding tons of unused content from the original Diddy Kong prototype, like unused music tracks, a plethora of unused sprites, and some unused maps. An additional 2 prototypes were found with very different engines. First, a Mode 7 style engine, similar to what we would see in Banjo Pilot, and a second, earlier voxel prototype with some impressive results for the Game Boy Advance. The reason behind the change is a familiar one. Rare was purchased by Microsoft in 2002, and Nintendo pulled their license for Rare to use the Donkey Kong IP. Diddy Kong Racing Adventure. Continuing on a familiar track, there was yet another Diddy Kong Racing game that never graced our consoles. Diddy Kong Racing Adventure was pitched by the Climax Group, whose most recent efforts had them assist development on Housemarque's 2021 release, Returnal. But back in 2004, Climax had developed a demo for a sequel to Diddy Kong Racing to pitch to Nintendo. Intended for the Gamecube, the demo could only run on the Xbox at the time, and featured the Whiz Pigs teaming up with the Gremlings to terrorize the Kongs. Try saying that 5 times fast. It would have had an expanded adventure mode, with a focus on traveling between villages and hidden areas. This pitch was rejected by Nintendo, with the remake of the original coming out on the DS in 2007. Donkey Kong Gamecube. Another rumor that spread that Rare wasn't only working on Diddy Kong Pilot before Microsoft's buyout, but also a successor to Donkey Kong Country and DK64 on the GameCube. It would have been a 3D game with a similar style to DK64. Hardly anything is known about this game, other than the music team at Rare were set to work on the game. Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers. And now we have the obligatory cancelled puzzle game. Coconut Crackers was going to be developed for the Game Boy Advance and featured block-fitting puzzle mechanics on a checkerboard. This was another DK game affected by the Microsoft acquisition, as its release was delayed from its intended date in December 2001. But all is not lost for Coconut Crackers, as it was redeveloped into what is now known as It's Mr. Pants, which had its trademark registered in 2001 and releasing in 2004. Donkey Kong Racing. Yet another Kong victim of Microsoft's Rare acquisition is Donkey Kong Racing. It was going to be a sequel to the acclaimed Diddy Kong Racing for the GameCube. The game was officially announced with a trailer at 2001's E3. What little information remains is details of a mechanic where the player would have to train their animal mount before they could race with them. It ended up being a classic case of vaporware, which is a name given to games whose development virtually vanished out of existence. Make sure to subscribe and like the video. Check out our episodes on every cancelled Mega Man game and every cancelled Kirby game. Become a GameFAQs Special member for exclusive episodes. Thanks for watching. This has been a GameFAQs Special.